How's it going, guys? Got something special today. I was at my local grocery store this morning doing my socially responsible, keeping at a distance weekly shopping trip. And I think in one of the earlier videos here I mentioned that I had read that Mac and Jack was canning their flagship African Amber Ale. I had been following their beer tracking website and had not seen it coming anywhere near the island, and happened to stumble across this in the beer section and pick myself up a couple 6-packs, as you can see. For those of you that don't know the history or how Mac and Jack operates, for the vast majority of their existence, they have never produced their African Amber in a can. It's primarily exclusively sold by the keg, or typically you find it in your local bar, bowling alley, that type of establishment. Mac and Jack's African Amber falls under a category, as the title states, as an amber ale. It's unfiltered and dry hopped, and I believe the story goes, at least in the early days, every keg that left their brewery had a package of hops in a container within the keg itself, so you always had a fresh hop flavor to the beer. I'm going to pop this one open and pour it, but you'll note it's being as it's unfiltered, it's going to be hazy, and as the title would lead you to believe, a lovely amber color. As you can see, kind of a medium head, and just a beautiful color. You take a sip of African Amber, probably the first thing that hits me is a strong malt taste to it, almost a biscuity, sweet front on it. And I think the subtle beauty of this particular beer is the fact that that falls away quickly, and you're left with a impression of the dry hopping and quite a bit of hop flavor. It was probably, and probably still to this day, one of the most consistently excellent, though largely distributed in the area, microbrews. You go to a restaurant, you go to a bar or bowling alley, and you see they have Mac and Jack on tap, and you're pretty certain it's going to be a good beer to drink. From what I understand, at least from the emails I got, they've actually, Mac and Jack as a brewery, well, I think it had to be about 6 months ago, started canning some of their stuff. It may be longer than that, but that's when I saw it in the stores. But they've refrained from canning their flagship. I think this is all part of the COVID, and since it's hard to get out, impossible to get out to a bar or a restaurant to get it, this is a limited release of theirs, and a nod to those of us who dearly love the beer, and gives us the opportunity to still drink it, even though we can't get out and do our local watering holes. Did a real quick look up on it, and it's 5.8% alcohol, and sits in at a pretty moderate 30 IBU. Their website, coming off Mac and Jack's site, say they use a combination of Cascade and Nugget hops. Cascade I'm very familiar with. It's one of the Northwest standards. Gives you a lovely citrus kind of grapefruit taste, and it's a dual purpose, so the alpha-etic resins are somewhere in the ballpark of, it allows you to at least, they're high enough so you can at least use it as a bittering hop, but still provide not so overwhelming. You can still use it as flavoring. But the Nugget I was not all that familiar with. I haven't brewed with it. And what they say is, at least on the Hop Growers Association, it's a 13.5 to 16%, typically used strictly as a bittering. Has a spicy, woody, clean flavor to it. And I guess taking a sip, that's probably that leads to the fact the beer doesn't linger too long. It's not a super trying to think of the exact word, but it doesn't hang on your palate after taking a sip. It is pretty clean. And I attribute to that hop. I encourage any of you who are in the area to keep your eyes open. Make sure you pick up a 6-pack. Like I said, I've got 2 to enjoy, at least, and hopefully until things open up back around here. If you're not from the Northwest and once things go back to normal and you're visiting and you see it on tap, I wholeheartedly would recommend on this. In other news, I was kind of hanging with a few of my beer drinking buddies last night via Zoom, and it was kind of fun because we all homebrew, and we had got to talking about beer and why we do it and why we brew, and I was very it was intriguing to find that we all had a little different take as to why we do it and how we go about doing it. I keep a real defined journal when I do a batch of beer, where I write down the numbers and the amounts and quantities. And I was talking with my friend John, and he's kind of the opposite. It's a lot like a baker versus like a chef or a cook, where the cook tends to be more free form, where it's almost an art form. And if you brew something that's amazing, he said, part of the joy was the fact that you'll never have the same thing twice, and it's part of the passion of brewing that allows you to strive to try to do that again, or go for something different. Whereas for me, it's kind of fun, or part of what I get out of it is the repeatability, where I can brew something that I really enjoy and I can do it again. Both interesting sides of the hobby. If I can figure out the technology, or if things ever open back up, I think at some point I may get some guest hopheads on board, and we can have some discussions that may make for some interesting watching. I've always promised I'm not going to make these videos too long. I think I've sung the praises of Mac and Jack's African Amber about as far as I can. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my glass here, and as I always say, enjoy a cold one.